بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Welcome to our fourth class on the Ikhtiyar. Alhamdulillah, we've covered a lot of really important discussions and topics, gotten some good insight into how the Imams thought, how they discussed things. And now in this, we are going to discuss um, the important issue of calculations versus normal eyesight sightings of the moon. This is like a majorly debated hot topic, which we're going to cover today, inshallah, as well as accepting the witness of someone who says that they saw the moon. How many you need? Is one okay? How does that witness, like, what are the qualities of that witness, and the differences of opinion with regard to that? So inshallah, that's kind of what we've laid out today. I'm going to just break down. There's a really good um, video by Sheikh Hamza Kamali from Basir Education. He kind of breaks down in a little bit more detail the difference between physical sighting of the moon and calculations. I'm going to post that link in the class in the group, inshallah. But regardless, I'm going to take everything the most important points from that, and I'm going to bring in also some other things that I've read to kind of discuss this topic, inshallah. So, Bismillah. Usama, would you mind reading?
يا بسم الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال ويجب أن يلتمس الناس الهلال في 29 من شعبان وقت الغروب، وهو المأثور عنه عليه السلام وعن السلف.
Yes. So he says that it is obligatory, it's wajib, mandatory, for everyone to look for the moon on the 29th of Sha'ban. That's when you go. And this is what at the time of Maghrib. So at the time of Maghrib, everyone goes out to sight the moon. This is the major sunnah of the Prophet and all of the Salaf. Like everyone did this, right? It's a major practice and something that should be revived, right? So even if one does take the opinion, as we're going to see, of the calculation, it's still sunnah to go and look for the moon, right? And there's a lot of benefit, communal benefit that is associated with seeing the moon, looking for the moon, gathering together and establishing the month. That is clear to anyone who's gone and looked for the moon with their community. Bismillah.
So would this be an obligatory act to go and see the moon, or is it a sunnah?
No, this is an absolute obligation that everyone has to go find the moon. Now, the thing is, we're gonna see that they disagree. Like, finding the moon could be calculations, so then you don't have to. But to
Okay.
establish the month of Ramadan is an obligation.
Right.
That's what that means. Yeah.
And this would be like a uh fard ayn, right? Not like
So
or like not a communal obligation.
it is a communal obligation. It's a fard kifaya, right? That
Okay.
at least one person or one group of people find the moon. And that's why there's usually a community. Even if you're in a Muslim country, there's a community. And even in the West, there's sometimes committees that go and find the moon for people. Moonsighting.co.com has one, is one, right? So there's committees that kind of suffice the ummah for this. Inshallah.
فإن رأوه الصاموا وإن غم عليهم أكملوه 30 يوما، لقوله عليه السلام: صوموا لرؤيته وأفطروا لرؤيته فإن غم عليكم فعدوا شعبان 30 يوما. ولأن الشهر كان ثابتا فلا يزول إلا بدليل، وهو الرؤية أو إكمال العدة، وهكذا الحكم في كل شهر.
Great, mashallah. So they say, now, if they see it on the 29th, they fast. And if they don't, if it's cloudy, they cannot see the moon, and they complete 30 days. And this is from the famous hadith of the Prophet that's narrated in Bukhari and Muslim, which he says, fast to its sight, right? And break your fast to its sight, the moon. If it's not clear, if it is hidden to you, فَعُدُّوا right? Then complete the 30 days of Sha'ban, right? And الشهر كان ثابتا فلا يزول إلا بالدليل. This is just like a quick عِلَّة, which is that the month was established. Sha'ban, we're 100% in Sha'ban, so you can only leave Sha'ban to Ramadan with a proof, with a dalil. You can't just say that it's Ramadan just because, and that is either the sight or completing the 30 days. And this is the ruling for every lunar month, right? So every lunar month is either 29 or 30 days. And now this is where we're going to talk about the differences of agreement. So there are two valid opinions, and this is going to be a difference between not only the Hanafi method, but also in the Shafi'i madhab itself. And that's why there is the opinion, which is that calculations is a valid tool or mechanism to cite the moon and to establish the month. And there's other opinion that it's not, right? That you actually have to see this. Now, the clearest opinion is the one that says that you have to see it with your own eye. This is from the hadith because it's saying fast when you see the moon. So the sight is what we're looking for. You actually have to see it in order to fast. Right now this is not a weak opinion even in the Shafi'i madhab. This is like, for example, this is Imam Ramli's opinion. He's one of the Mu'tamad scholars. He wrote his major sharh on the Muhtaj, the Minhaj, sorry. And his opinion is that even if it is impossible to witness the moon, but it is scientifically or has been calculated to be witnessed, then Ramadan is established, right? So as long as the calculations have proven that the moon has entered into the phase, the phase of the next month, then you fast Ramadan. It doesn't matter whether you can see it, whether it's possible to see, whether it's impossible to see, right? It's all about the phases of the moon. And because Imam Ramli, he and the other scholars that support this opinion, they looked at when they said fast when you see the moon, what they said that the hidden kind of legal cause is the existence of the moon. I look for the moon because when it exists, when it's in that stage, that's when you fast, not when you see it. So the sight, they understood this hadith as the sight not being a literal obligation, right, to establishing the month. That as long as we're in the phase of Ramadan, we've actually began the month of Ramadan scientifically, or the moon actually has entered into that phase, then that's what really matters. And everyone else basically, they held on to the opinion that the hadith is clear, right? So because it's clear and it's talking about the sight, then you have to go by the sight. You can't just say it's about existence. The Prophet says, fast when you see the moon. So we fast when we see the moon. And it's not really a problem because if you don't see it, you just fast the next day, right? If you don't see it, you just fast the next day. And this is like the majority opinion. This is one, for example, this is like the Council of Jordan, for example, uses this opinion for establishing the moon. Other, countries will use complete calculations like Saudi and Turkey uses calculations, for example. Now, what's really important though is that there are two caveats or discussions or points that really matter with regards to discussing the moon. And that is number one, حكم الحاكم يرفع الخلاف, right? That now the ruling of the ruler of the country is that it removes all disagreement. And that's why if one is in a Muslim country and the government or the establishment of seeing the moon has said and announced that Ramadan is the next day, either the 29th or the 30th, right? Then it is obligatory upon everyone to follow that opinion. As long as they have established it based off of a valid opinion, which it is, there is no longer a disagreement. No one can say, you know what, but I disagree with that. I think it's better this way. Because it has been established by a Muslim government, then that is what the Muslims in that land must follow. Now, the discussion really comes to Muslims in the West, right? We don't have someone telling us, this is when Ramadan. And that's why there's even a lot of disagreement between communities, right? You have one community that's fasting, according to calculations, a day early, for example, and one is fasting the next day because they didn't see the moon, right? So one thing that's also really important here is regardless of what opinion is more correct, and we really can't discuss that I mean, we can say that, I believe this is an opinion and this is what the majority of the scholars have said, but being that it still is two valid opinions, we look to other factors. Another factor that is really important with regards to Ramadan is the communal agreement, which means that if one's whole entire family is following calculations, for you to break out of that and follow just pure moon sighting, right, would cause a rift in that family. Maybe not in some families, but in a lot of families, it might cause argumentation. It might cause hard feelings that one person is everyone's doing Eid and you're still fasting on Eid, right? So because of that, one should, in reality, follow whatever the majority, their family or the community is doing, right? Especially if it is a strong, tight-knit community or a tight-knit family where it's really important to that family that they all participate and partake in the communal acts of worship and celebrations together, right? That they all enjoy celebrating Eid together. And you, that one person still fasting, right, is problematic. So because we have the leeway to take different opinions, and this is what Sheikh Hamza kind of, elucidates in his video, is that we should always look to avoiding strife and disagreement and argumentation, especially on days such as Eid, especially on the end of the month, right, when it is a valid opinion. Now, with that being said, it is very clear that not only is it more literal to follow this hadith literal, like by talking about direct sight, sight, but also it is um, more taqwa based. There is more ihtiyat because, as we saw earlier, there is a important aspect of the madhab, which is that we want to try and remove ourselves from khilaf as much as possible. We saw this earlier, that you leave the khilaf. If there's a khilaf that says for example, you have to make the intention before maghrib, before the next day of fasting, and the Hanafi said you can do up until half the day. Right? You should still always try and make your intention before maghrib, before the next day, in order to leave that khilaf, in order to leave that scholarly disagreement, so that you're agreeing with everyone. In the same case here, right? Because we have two major opinions, the best would be to establish it. If one is not basically, like I said, pressured, or there's no ruling by a religious authority, to establish it by seeing it, right? And that means that we can disagree with the hadith and take this Shafi'i opinion, or we can actually take both. And the way that we take both is that we look for the moon, but we use calculations, right, for other methods and for other discussions with regarding to the site. And we're going to see this later on when it comes to establishing the moon with witnesses, is that the calculations, this is what's done in Jordan, the calculations are going to be used to reject a witness if it is impossible for the moon to be seen, for example, right? So this is kind of where the calculations will come into. And there really is no harm in following, as I mentioned, the original opinion of sight, because like I said, if you don't see it the first day, you just fast the next day. So this is kind of, a lot of people, it's almost like a dogmatic disagreement where it's either this way or it's that way. And if you're looking with, for the moon with calculations, you're wrong and it's a bid'ah and you can't do that. Or other people will say like, no, if you're looking for your eyes, you're primitive and you're not using science, and this is why the deen contradicts science, and how could this be true? All of this is unnecessary. Both opinions are valid. Both opinions use scholarly reasons to come to their conclusions, and both can be followed. And it's up to the individual to decide what they want to choose, right? So the immediate Hanafi opinion, though, is that it's best to for the site, right? This is the majority opinion. So I leave it up to you, right? I've given you the opinions. The majority is with actually seeing it with your eyes, and it's up to you now, depending on your individual situation, depending on your family, your community, and all of those factors, to come to conclusion that not only, right, leaves you satisfied with your obeying Allah and with your fulfilling the right of fasting, but also, right, it's not does not cause too many problems with your family, and is the best for the entire picture, right, of the community, the communal fast, which is Ramadan. Alhamdulillah. So before we continue from that, any questions about this? Yes, Didi.
Sheikh, we have a little bit different debate in our community.
Mhm.
The claim is that the Prophet ﷺ did not look for the first of Ramadan, but it was for the last of the Shaban for
Mhm.
the purpose of calculation. Is it anything like that? Whether Prophet has looked for the first of Ramadan or the end of the Shaban? Which was the thing? Which was the moon Prophet ﷺ was looking for? Because
So
he said when there is no moon, then we conclude it to be 30. So it is like calculating even before the Ramadan. So people say here, if it is like you are actually looking for the first of Ramadan, actually you don't get the first of Ramadan because it is already one and you would fast the next day. So the actual thing is you have to look from Shaban. So what is the right opinion, Sheikh?
well, maybe inshallah if there's something written, you can share that with me. But on the 29th, you're looking for the moon of Ramadan, because if you see the moon of Ramadan, you fast. Right? The next day is Ramadan. And it's only that if you don't see the moon, then you establish Ramadan as one extra day. So it is true that it is contingent on seeing the moon, but the moon is actually the moon of Ramadan. So if you look at the phases of the moon, how it works is that as the moon, is going through its cycle, it is in between the moon is Earth is in between the sun and the moon when there's a full moon, and that's why you get that complete reflection of the sun on the moon. And as it starts to rotate, or we are rotating, and the moon is rotating, we see that it becomes half moon when it's next to us. That's a half moon, and then as it starts to go and in between the sun, from where we're situated on the earth, when the moon is in between the sun and the earth, you no longer can see the moon, because the sun is facing, right? It's facing the back side of the moon, and the front side, which is facing us, is dark because there's no sunlight hitting that side. And as it starts to then turn, right, that's when you start to see the very sliver. Now, it's not directly in between the earth and the sun. It is a bit higher, and that's where you can see that sliver as it turns. So you are actually seeing the sliver of the next moon phase of Ramadan. That's the moon that we see on the 29th of Shaban, if you see the next for Ramadan. So you are establishing it with the month of Ramadan, and calculations is just establishing that phase has begun, but that it's actually like the moon is actually there. Now, it might be impossible to see for a bunch of different reasons, but it's actually entered into that phase. So that's kind of, yeah.
Chef. And they say it is impossible to actually sight the moon of first of Ramadan. And when people here do that, even the people from other community, Hindu community, they say actually you people are fasting on the second day. It is not the first moon you are sighting. And many propose a claim that it is impossible to see the first moon because of the rise of the moon is at the Fajr for the first day, and when it comes when the Maghrib time comes, actually it actually sets. You cannot say it like that.
Interesting. I mean, inshallah, if you have like something that's written about this, inshallah, please share. I'd love to look into this more. But if people have seen the moon, we have established the month on the 29th. So that means that I don't see, I don't know, I don't see how, the moon cycle is it's pretty clear. So whether or not you can actually see it or not, there's a lot of factors that go into that. But the moon cycle itself, you can't really get that wrong, because it's by seeing the moon itself, right? That's what, or by the moon phases themselves. So Allahu Alam, whether or not you cannot, I'm pretty sure you can see the moon on the 29th, and it has been
Uh,
seen, so
yes, chef. So here it is proposed by a committee called Hijri Committee from our place. So they said if you see you can see the 29th, or you may be seeing the 28th moon of Shaban. And if you are sure that the next day you are not seeing any moon, then you are completing the particular month. So it can be like 29 or 30 of that month. The next day will be automatically one. So they're looking for a no moon day actually. So if you establish a no moon day, the next will be the first moon of the next, like that. They have a different approach in our community. Inshallah, I will share, Sheikh.
Inshallah, I think that aligns. Like if you don't see it, then the next day is Ramadan anyways. And if you saw it, then that would be the next Ramadan. Because the idea is that when you're right that the moon does disappear. So as soon as it disappears, it's going to be on the 29th, the 28th, right? The 28th it disappears. That means that the next time you see it, it's possible to see it. That's the next Ramadan. That's the next month, right? So you're right that if you don't actually might not see it, but if you don't see it, then that's when you establish it on being on the next day, right? So it's on the, if you don't see it the 29th, you fast, then you start on the 30th. Then you complete 30 Shaban and you start the next day after that. So that's exactly what we do, right? You either see the moon or you don't. But if there's more discussion about this, inshallah, then please share. Inshallah, I can look that up and I'll do some research with regards to that. Okay, so that's kind of just the basic disagreement and discussion about moon sighting versus calculations. So now we're going to talk about actually sighting the moon. And witnessing and bearing witness to seeing it. So go ahead, Osama.
بسم الله. قال وإن كان بالسماء علة غيم أو غبار أو نحوهما مما يمنع الرؤية قبل شهادة الواحد العدل والحر والعبد والمرأة في ذلك السواء. أما الواحد فلما تقدم من حديث الأعرابي ولأنه أمر ديني فيقبل قول الواحد كرواية الأخبار والإخبار عن نجاسة الماء والطهارة ولا يشترط فيه لفظ الشهادة. وأما العدالة فلأنه من أخبار الدينيات فتشترط العدالة كسائر الأمور الدينية وتقبل شهادة المحدود في القذف إذا تاب لأن الصحابة رضي الله عنهم قبلوا شهادة أبي بكر وفي المستور الحالي خلاف بين الأصحاب.
So he says, now what happens if we cannot see the moon? So there's dust or there's clouds or anything like that. Now we cannot see the moon. So one person comes and they bear witness. Do we accept his witness or not? Or that person's witness, right? And they say yes, right? So if it's not clear, right? If it's not a clear night, it's hard to see the moon, then one upright witness, whether that's a free person or a slave, a man or a woman, it's all the same. It is accepted, right? And now he's going to explain. So he says, as for only one witness, why is this allowed? Because of the hadith of the Arabian, the Bedouin. We saw that, right? With regards to fast. We saw this with regards to the intention after Fajr. So the Arabi came, he bare witness. He said he was Muslim. He bare witness that he saw the moon the next day. And the Prophet he told everyone to complete your day fasting with the intention, if you haven't eaten, and then do imsak if you have eaten, because now it has been established that it's Ramadan. So that's a clear hadith. We saw this hadith already. And because in amrun dini, in religious matters, one person is acceptable, especially in, for example, narrating news or narrating opinions, right? So when we see hadith, right, one person narrating something, that's valid, right? This is one person, he narrates from the Prophet ﷺ, and then it narrates from one person. Now there's going to be like discussion about that narration, but it still is accepted that this is something the Prophet ﷺ said, as long as he's upright, right? So one person narrating something is accepted in religious matters. And this is the same case, for example, talking about, the filthiness or the purity of water, right? If one person comes to you and says, this water has najis in it, you have to accept, and he's an upright person, you have to accept his witness, right? You can't say, well, it's only one person, so whatever, I'm just gonna use the water, right? No, right? If he told you that it's najis, right, then you have to accept that. If someone comes to you and they say, and he's an upright person, he says, did you know that this happened, right? For you not to accept that with no other reason, right, is not, especially if it's religious matters, it's not acceptable, right? You have to accept that. وَلَا يُشْتَرَطُ فِيهِ لَفْظَةُ الشَّهَادَةِ, and it's not necessary that he even says, I bear witness. So he doesn't have to say, I witness that I saw this, or I swear that I saw this. He just has to actually say, I saw the moon. I saw the moon. As for uprightness, this is because it is a religious matter. And in religious matters, that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has established for us, that we look towards the uprightness of the person who is narrating or bearing witness. And this is in everything. This is in the court cases, this is in the moon, this is in a lot of different chapters of fiqh as well. Right? So like every other matter of the religion, one needs to be upright. I need to be upright. Now it's going to talk about like a side issue, which is that actually, before we get to that, what is adala? What is uprightness? How do we define that? So there's a footnote from the Hashi ibn Abidin, which is that adala, uprightness, is a strength or an ability that pushes someone to protect themselves from sin and from doing things that ruin their reputation, right? So it's an inner quality that establishes taqwa with them and protects them from doing things, right, that ruin their reputation. For example, right, I am someone, right, if I have a brightness that prevents me from, for example, walking outside, someone walking outside dressed inappropriately, right? It ruins their reputation. That prevents me from doing something haram because I have taqwa, I fear Allah, right? This is something that reminds me, the shaitan whispers in my ear or it says something, do this, do that. My nafs has an urge, and I get reminded by this strength, this faculty, which says fear Allah, right? And that's why you stop. That's why you don't do those sins. You don't follow your nafs, right? Now, what is that practically? That is avoiding all of the major sins. So how do you see that this is in someone? Avoiding the major sins and continuity on the minor sins and what ruins someone's reputation, right? So what that means is you see someone, he doesn't do any major sins, right? Now, Allahu Alam, we're talking about publicly. We're not talking about privately. Privately, no one knows. But in the public sphere of things, that's between him and Allah. In the public sphere of things, he doesn't do any major, and he is not persistent on minor sins, right? So you don't see him. He's someone, you see someone, and he constantly, for example, like a minor sin would be, I don't want to say something that's actually a major sin, but a minor sin would be like someone is reading behind the imam, right? That's like in Hanafi, it's makruh tahrim, and it's a sin, right? I'm just giving a very basic example, right? And he knows his fiqh. So, or for example, missing witr, right? That's a minor sin. That's not a major sin. right? So it's still sinful though, right? To intentionally miss a witr consistently. So, he misses it a couple times. He makes Toba, but he's not someone who just, I don't pray witr. I don't, I just not interested, right? And he's also not someone who does a major sin. Like you haven't seen him drink alcohol. You haven't seen him commit zina, right? He hasn't been, taken to court for that. He hasn't been, his hand hasn't been cut off because he stole. He hasn't killed someone, right? So as long as those major sins aren't apparent, and he's not persistent on minor sins, although everyone commits minor sins, but he is someone who is working on himself, right? He's working on himself. That's considered someone who is upright. So it's not that you're perfect. It's not that you have no sins, but it means that you are consistently working on yourself. That is someone who is an upright person, right? So he says, now, what about the person? This kind of gets into the chapter of bearing witness. And there's a whole aspect of someone who they were caught in lying about bearing witness falsely about someone else. So for example, if someone bears witness that someone else committed zina and he was mistaken, that's called qadhf, mahdud fil qadhf, right? It's a major sin as well, right? And there's a had for that, right? So it's a major thing in Islam. You can't just accuse people of doing things. You can't just, say whatever you want about someone and then it doesn't matter. No, there are repercussions to saying things about other Muslims, attacking their honor, attacking their religiosity, right, in the public sphere. It's a major sin, right? If it's incorrect, right? So, and that's where there's a punishment, an actual had for bearing an incorrect witness, right? For someone saying that someone committed zina when they actually hadn't, or you don't have enough evidence to prove it. That is a major sin, and it has a had punishment, right? So he says that their witness, that person, right, if they were established that they did that, as long as they made Toba, right, they obviously received the punishment and they made Toba, then their witness is accepted, right? So their witness is accepted as long as they made Toba. And this is what we saw, he says, with the Sahaba. They accepted the witness of Abi Bakr radiallahu anhu, who's a major Sahabi, or Tabi'i, but I think major Sahabi, and he had received the punishment of qadhf, right? So he had received that, and they accepted his opinion. There's a whole hadith about this that's narrated by Imam al-Bayhaqi and others. Now, the last thing he says, in the person mastur al-hal, you don't know who he is. So let's say there's someone who comes in, nowadays everyone's mastur al-hal. Right? May Allah forgive us and cover our sins. But in the past, we had Muslim communities, and it was a very important aspect that everyone held their own honor and their religiosity. And the community took this very seriously, so that the point that they followed up on people. They checked in on people, and they established the religiosity of people by witnessing their outward practice, right? So how good of a Muslim is this person? Well, what sins does he do? What does he do that's like against the Muslim honor, the Muslim etiquette? Is he missing prayers in the mosque? Is he missing prayers? Have I seen him do something haram? Have I seen him do a kabira? These are all things that the community takes into consideration. Just like any tight-knit community, if you've been in one, right? Everyone knows the affairs of everyone else that you live around. Your neighbors, if you were very close to your neighbors, you would know the affairs of your neighbors, especially if you're close. Just like your family, the aspects of let's just say the nuclear family, your family, direct, immediate relatives, a lot about them more than anyone else. And you know how religious they are. One person, let's say, like, for example, I have 3 brothers, right? So I know the religiosity of my 3 brothers, and I know which ones outwardly, right, is more practicing, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the inward aspects of each other's heart. So we can't judge each other, but we outwardly can make judgments on people that will be then upstanded and used in court, right, to bear witness to things, right? So that's what a witness is. So what about someone you don't know? There's someone we don't know who he is. Like, how is he? Is he religious? Is he not really religious? We don't know. And he comes and says he saw the moon. or she comes and says she saw the moon, right? And he says that there's a difference of agreement between the people of the madhab, but as Allama ibn Abidin, the last muhakkak, the last final person who establishes the strongest opinion in the madhab, he said that it is accepted, and this is what the majority of scholars in the Hanafi opinion have relied upon, so that the person who is unknown is accepted in establishing the month of Ramadan. We're talking about the month of Ramadan right now. He's established. Now we're going to get into now we have 20 minutes. We're going to get into two new issues. So we're going to have one right now talking about an important issue, and then we're going to have a difference of agreement between Imam Muhammad and Abu Hanifa, and we're going to talk about their proofs right now. So bismillah. Any questions about what we just covered? Okay, so go ahead. ويفترض
ويفترض على ما رأى الهلال أن يؤدي الشهادة إذا لم تثبت دينه حتى يجب على المخدرة وإن لم يؤذن لها زوجها فإن أكملوا 30 ولم يروا الهلال قال محمد رضي الله عنه يفطرون بناء على ثبوت الرمضانية بشهادة الواحد وإن كان لا يثبت به ابتداء كالإرث بناء على ثبوت النسب بقول القابلة وروى الحسن عن أبي حنيفة رضي الله عنه أنهم لا يفطرون أخذا بالاحتياط وقال محمد رضي الله عنه لا أتهم مسلما بتعجيل الصوم يوم.
Great, mashallah. So he says, now it is an obligation upon everyone who saw the moon, right, to bear witness that they saw the moon. So this is, of course, if no one else has seen the moon. If they've already established it, they've already established it. But if they haven't, it is an obligation, an individual obligation, fard ayn, on whoever sees the moon to bear witness, right, if it is not established without them. حتى يجب على المخدرة وإن لم يأذن لها زوجها. Even upon, they mention here, the woman, they said the woman who wears, a khidra. So this is in the past, between in one room, if one person in one room, they didn't have many rooms in older houses. So what they do is they put up a veil, and that's called the khidra, between the woman and everyone else in the house, right? If there are other men who weren't her mahram, right? So the woman, what this means is the woman who basically stays in her house, who is very cautious about other people seeing her. She wears niqab, that's what it mentions here. Or even if she doesn't wear niqab, she just doesn't leave the house a lot. Now, this is not to say that a woman, that there is a huge aspect of a woman having to stay in her house, right? This is a different topic about, the guidelines to this, that women are not imprisoned in their house, right? But there also are guidelines, right, that are established, right, to protect the woman, right, from other men, right? So, and in particular with regards to leaving the house, right, and that's up to the husband to decide. So now, but that's not. So there are other aspects here where a woman will, of course, can leave the house, right, if she, if for example the husband is not providing for her properly, she can go and actually work. She can actually work if the husband's not providing for her. If she needs medicine, right? She doesn't have medicine. Of course, she can leave the house. And obviously, like nowadays, everyone just leaves the house, right? But that's not the way that it always was. That's not the way at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. And in general, it's not something that should be just an open door that the women of the house just leave whenever they want. That's not correct, right? It's something which is allowed, but in limit, right? In barrier, because especially in this day and age, especially with the lack of taqwa, and especially in being a non-Muslim land, the danger, right, that they face outside, or the fitna that might come up from other men, especially non-Muslims who don't have morals and who have overcoming passions, right, is very high, right? So it's something that the men really have to take into consideration, and their goal, of course, is to protect their spouse, right? It's not to imprison them, it's not to oppress them, it's to protect them. And that's what a good husband's going to do, what is best, what is in the best opinion, or in view of the best outcome for his wife, right? He wants what's best for her. So in this world and the next. So what it's saying here, though, is that a woman, even if her husband says you can't leave the house, you can't go bear witness, she actually has to disobey him and go bear witness, right? It's an obligation. So she sees the moon, and her husband says you can't go bear witness. She has to go bear witness, and he can't stop her, right? So he can't stop her, and she can't listen, right? If she saw the moon, right? So that's what that's saying there, right? So that's just to show the importance of establishing the month of Ramadan. Now he says, now what happens if, so one person comes and they bear witness that they saw the moon, right? So the Ramadan started, we accepted his witness. We complete 30 days, right? We didn't see it on the 29th of Ramadan, so to establish Shawwal, right? So we completed the 30 days, but then on day 30, on night 30, we didn't see the moon either, right? So it starts to give a problem. It's like, wait, did that one person actually see the moon? We couldn't see the moon, right? On the day, no one else did. This one person did. Sure, he was upright, but I mean, we're looking for the moon. It's very clear that one person might miss it. It's very easy to miss sighting the moon, right? It's not something that's just like, if you see it, it's clear as day. Not always. So we complete 30 days and we can't see the moon the next month. So what does this mean? It means that most likely this person made a mistake, right? So Muhammad, though, rahimahullah, he says that they break their fast. He says that he established that the month has began, we accepted his witness, therefore we established the end of the month, right? And he said that, and this is like a little parentheses, even if the end of the month isn't established by one person. So we're going to see that at the end of the month, let's say we all saw Ramadan, we began the month. To establish the end of the month, i.e. the month of Shawwal, one person cannot be established, is not enough, because there is extra precaution with ending the month early, because you might accidentally end it too early and you miss a day of fasting, right? So it's better to fast an extra day than to end it early. So one person is not allowed at the end of the month. So even if he isn't used at the end of the month, one's witness, because we established it in the beginning, it counts. So you break your fast, even if you don't see the month, even if you don't see the moon. So what Imam Muhammad is basing this off of is not the reality of the moon. He's basing it off of the witness. We've accepted his witness, therefore we accept the end of the month. And he says this is like al-irth binan ala thubut al-nasb yaqul al-qabila. So al-irth is inheritance. Inheritance, to establish inheritance, right? Basically, a receiver of inheritance, you need two witnesses. But to establish the relation between a child and their parent, even one person, which is a midwife, if the midwife bears witness, that suffices. So the midwife says, this baby is the child of so-and-so, that establishes their relationship, which then of course establishes their inheritance later on. Right? So even though we need two witnesses for the inheritance itself for someone else, right? The relationship is established by only one person. So it's the same idea, he says. Now, Hassan, the student of Abu Hanifa, he narrates that Abu Hanifa says that no, you do not fast the last day because you want to be careful. because there's a big problem, like, we don't see the moon. Why are we not seeing the moon on the 30th day? Sure, it's possible we just don't see it, but we should see it on the 30th day. Right? We should see it. Now, this is obviously, of course, if there is nothing blocking it. We're not talking about if it's still cloudy on 30th day. We're talking about it's clear skies. Why can't we see the moon on the 30th day? Right? So he says, out of precaution, you just fast one more day. You fast one more day, because if you fast one more day, 100% you've not left Ramadan. 100%. So because of that, because of the precaution, because we only accept, we based it off of one person. He could have been mistaken. We couldn't see it in the beginning of the month. Therefore, you just add an extra day. There's no harm in doing so, and you complete your fast. Muhammad's like, we don't need to do that, and you might be fasting on Eid, which is haram. So why do that when we've already established the month? And honestly, it's hard to choose between the two of them. They're very, very strong opinions. And the last thing that Imam Muhammad says, he says, "La attahimu musliman bita'jili somi yawman." I don't accuse someone of trying to fast a day early, right? Someone might want to end the fast a day early, right? Like the end of the month, they want to get to Eid, so they just they bear witness that they've seen the moon to end Ramadan, right? But in the beginning, like, why would someone intentionally want Ramadan to begin early, right? So Imam Muhammad's like, I don't accuse someone of doing this. It seems very far-fetched that someone is going to make this up, that someone's going to make up that they saw the moon to begin Ramadan early. So because of that, because as long as he is upright, I'm going to accept his witness. And if I accept his witness, then the month is done after 30. I don't look to 31. It's 30. That's it. And those are two valid opinions. Now, this is where, the Jordanian Council of Moon Sighting, they use calculations. So they use calculations in this particular aspect, this particular discussion, with regards to, they will negate opinions with sighting, but they won't prove opinions. What I mean by that is that if someone comes and they say that they've seen the moon on a cloudy day, for example, and the calculations say that it is impossible for anyone to see the moon, they will not accept that witness. They'll say, we have additional evidence, of course, to the doubt that you cannot see the moon, so we don't accept your witness, even if a bunch of other people come. So they'll use the calculations to negate the sight, but not to affirm the sight. So to affirm the sighting of the moon, they use witness. You either see it or you don't see it. I know it could be seen, but if you haven't seen it, we don't accept it. So you either see it or you complete 30 days of Sha'ban, sorry, and the month starts, right? But we can use calculations to negate people's witnesses. I.e., when it's impossible to see it and you're witnessing on a cloudy day, we'll negate it, right? And say that, no, Ramadan is not tomorrow, it's the day after, because it's impossible to see the moon tonight, and you're the only one, or you, even if it's a group of people, you tried to see that, you said you saw the moon, and it's clear that it's impossible to see the moon. Now, this is on a on a cloudy day, right? If it's a clear day and you have a huge group of people who saw the moon, then they saw the moon, right? As long as it's a number that is, we're going to see this later on, that establishes knowledge. Knowledge, the Imam he can say that by their witness they establish knowledge. Now, even then, they might even reject their opinion if it can't be seen. So this is where, like, they will use the calculations to reject opinions. It cannot be seen the 29th. No matter how many people come and bear witness, we're not going to accept it because it can't be seen. And it's just the next day, right? As opposed to, it can be seen. They don't just say, okay, we're fasting Ramadan tomorrow, like everywhere else. Like the people who use calculations, as long as you can see it, or as long as the month has began, technically the phase of the moon has started, Ramadan's tomorrow, right? No, they say, no, you actually have to see it. So if it can be seen, let's all go out and look for it. We either see it or we don't. And the next day, if we don't see it, we fast the next day. But if it's impossible to be seen, we don't care about any witnesses, right? And this is kind of a modern approach to this masala. It's a good approach. It's strong. It uses the science and the things that we have to establish, to negate, false witnesses. And it's really easy to make a mistake, right? You might see something and you just, you think it's the moon, but it's not actually the moon. Right? So it's good to use it in this case, but they still maintain the wording, the exact wording of the hadith, by saying that you have to see it with your eyes. So because of that, or you have to actually see it. So because of that, they don't establish the month with the calculations. You still have to see it, and I think that's probably the best opinion I've seen so far. Use the calculations, but don't establish the month with those calculations. Alhamdulillah. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam taslima. Any final questions before we end class today? We'll leave it open for some Q&A if there is any Q&A, inshallah.
Sheikh, whose opinion is that we can use calculation to negate the appearance of moon?
So that is the Jordanian Ifta. So like all of the muftis, they use in Jordan, the Jordanian Council of Sighting the Moon use this one. That's their scholarly opinion. And I heard this from a mufti himself directly. So it's who is a mufti of Jordan.
Sheikh. So if they ask for any dalil for this thing, is there anything, Sheikh?
So, I mean,
Or is there any legal maxims like we can say that this is what makes it working?
it's just using the modern tools that we have, but not breaking away from the majority of opinions with regards to establishing the month, right? So they're not breaking away from the majority in establishing the month with sight, but they're using the tools that they have in order to give and shine light on something which was already unclear, right? The witness of one person when it's a cloudy day is an unclear situation. So we're accepting it. They originally accepted it because of the hadith and because of the necessity to and the basis that one witness is allowed in establishing religious affairs. But if you have that extra aspect of clarity, that extra aspect of scientific awareness, then why not? Right? Why establish it off of that one person, right? When we can use the calculations. Now, if the calculation said that it's possible that someone saw it and then it was cloudy, right? Or it's cloudy, they said it's still possible though, right? And then someone comes and says it, then they'll still use that. They'll still use that same ruling, but they'll use it in the case where it's the calculations say it's impossible for you to see the moon, and then one person comes and says, yeah, I saw the moon. And it's kind of like, it's really far-fetched, honestly, that one person saw the moon on a cloudy day when the calculations say that it's impossible. Like, sure, we can accept your thing, but even taqwa, even what's like my heart is telling me I shouldn't believe you. Not because I don't trust you, because I just think that you're mistaken, because it's so easy to be mistaken, right? So the strongest, most taqwa opinion would be to use the calculations, would be to establish it with that, because that's what's allowing you, that's what's giving you more insight into what's actually happening. No. Any other questions? No. Okay, inshallah. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.